Tim Tszyu will return to the ring against undefeated American Anthony Velazquez in Sydney on Wednesday night in a fight that's quickly developed plenty of tension between both camps. The official press conference gets underway at midday, where our reporter Cody Kaye will be. Codes, hello to you. You're with me right now. Velazquez, he said, him and his camp, they said, well, they think they could retire Tszyu. How dangerous do you think this fight is for Tim?
Look, you know, I think you look at Velazquez's record and 18 wins, 15 of them inside the distance. Like, he can punch, but you hear it said all the time, and Tim said it on Friday. Look, there are levels to boxing, and for me, even a diminished Tim Tszyu isn't going to have any problems with Velazquez. From the fights that I've seen of Anthony Velazquez, I don't think there's anything there that Tim should be concerned about. He's heavy-footed. And if you look at the calibre of opponents, like the last guy he fought, Terry Chatwood, was coming off two stoppage losses. So this is not a guy that's been fighting at the level that Tim's been at. Tim has been at world title level now for a number of years. Yeah, look, he's been battered around and he's had some tough losses against elite opposition. For Velazquez to be coming out here and saying all that stuff, you know, maybe they really believe it. Maybe they really believe that Tim is at the end and that they can come out here and do a job on him on Wednesday and catch him early. And stopped him. They said they'd stop him in round 6. They'd retire him on his stool. So these guys have been lippy since the moment they got here, and they haven't been in the country for very long because he was delayed for 2 days in LAX. So, look, yeah, there's a point that Hector Bermudez, Velazquez's trainer, made that when you're trying to rebuild a fighter, you don't pick a puncher. That's true. I just don't think that Velazquez is the puncher that has any of the other necessary skill sets to really trouble Tim. So. You never know. The thing is about boxing, when you're in there with a heavy puncher, you just never know. I just think even a diminished Tim Tszyu is going to be far too good for Velazquez. So it's a dangerous fight in terms of this guy can punch, but I think that's the only danger it really poses for Tim.
And this is the first time we're going to see Tim with this new camp that he's taken on, and Velazquez's trainer, as you mentioned, Hector Bermudez, has repeatedly said Tszyu's decision to link with this Cuban coach, Pedro Diaz, will be a disaster. Do you expect to see a different Tim, or how do you see it?
I think it's really hard to change who you are in 8 weeks. And to Hector Bermudez's point, I mean, you know, Pedro Diaz comes out of that Cuban system where he's training. It's a very different style of fighting. It's fighting off the back foot. It's a very defensive-minded approach, and I love that because I think the one thing we've seen with Tim is that if there is a deficiency in his game, it probably is defence. Look, he got caught early against Bakram Murtazaliev. Sebastian Fundora is a nightmare for anybody. So maybe, as Tim said, we underrate his defence. Maybe we do. But I've asked him a couple of times, like, are we going to see a different version of you? And he said, no, you're not. So that kind of makes you think, well, then why are we with Pedro? Because Pedro, stylistically, is so different to what he's worked on with Igor, Igor Golubov, his uncle and long-time trainer, who he only recently split from. So I think, if anything, from Tim probably felt that he just needed a fresh approach. If Tim can implement a few things, particularly defensively, and it won't happen in one fight. This is something that happens over, you know, 12 to 18 months with a number of fights. But Pedro Diaz could be really good for him. I guess the question becomes, if Tim gets caught early, does he then start to have brain fog about what's Pedro been working on with me, and does he just go back to what he instinctively knows? Because that's the thing, when a fighter's in a firefight, they'll go back to what their instincts are. So I don't think we'll see a vastly different Tim Tszyu. I think that the real benefit of his work with Pedro Diaz probably won't become apparent for another 18 months.
Say he does win on Wednesday. What's next for Tim? Do you think he can get back to those world titles?
It's a big if, isn't it? Look, the big question is, you know, and I've said it so many times, that we don't know how much is left. When a fighter, quits on their stool, even against a great champion like Sebastian Fundora, once that's in a fighter's mind that there's a way out other than being that they can give themselves an exit ramp, that can be a really hard thing to block out when you're in a really tough situation. So Tim's definitely got a lot of, I think, demons that he needs to overcome. And look, his last 3 world titles have all been defeats against, as I said, elite opposition. But to get back to that place at 31 years of age now, he needs to go on an incredible tear. He needs to evolve as a fighter. I think, you know, I think Tim probably has taken a couple of steps back from the fighter that we saw that was blasting Tony Harrison, Carlos Ocampo and Brian Mendoza, guys like this. But do I think he can? Yeah, I think he can. But he really I think needs to go back to the drawing board in a lot of ways and become a defensive-minded fighter, because Tim can bang. There's no doubt about it. Tim can hurt anybody in the division. It's just that he gets caught too often and too frequently. So if he can work on those parts of his game, then I don't see why not. But he cannot have another loss now with 3 losses in his career at 31.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all on Wednesday, and we'll have that press conference a bit later on. So thanks for the update, Codes.
Thanks, Charles.